All right, welcome back. Here's video number 6. This is about tree diagrams, something you might have seen before. So tree diagrams, they're an alternative to the area model. And so, for example, let's do this when we're going to flip 2 coins. We're going to start where it says start, and we're going to make a little tree kind of thing where if you go up, you get heads, and if you go down, you get tails. You can see that the probability of getting heads is 1/2, and the probability of getting tails is 1/2. This is the regular fair coin. We're going to continue and say we're going to be flipping 2 coins, so that was the first coin. Now we start flipping the second coin. So if it's heads, you could get either heads or tails, and that gives 2 outcomes, either heads heads or heads tails. So heads first followed by heads first followed by tails. We can do the same at the bottom branch, heads and tails. At this point, I want to stop and point out that although we call this a tree diagram, they're often written in this direction so that it looks more like a tree that's been chopped down diagram. That's all right. You could also draw it as an upright tree. So let's analyze this and figure out what's the probability of heads heads. To do this, we'll just follow the path to heads heads. The first little arrow has a probability of 1/2. So that's the probability of heads. The second arrow, which we just turned red, is the second heads. It also has a probability of 1/2. So we multiply them together, 1/2 times 1/2 to get 1/4. Why do we multiply? Well, look. Over here on the left, that's the first flip. That means that the top part of the diagram is only has a probability of 1/2. There's only half the chance that you're even in the top part of the diagram. So to go to the top part of the top part is 1/2 of 1/2. And of, in this case, really means multiplication. So 1/2 of 1/2, as you know, is only 1/4. Okay? Let's move on. So what's the probability of 1 head and 1 tail? Let's look at it in the diagram. There are 2 ways to get to 1 head and 1 tail. You can either get to heads tails going the top route, or you can go to tails heads doing the bottom route. Those are the 2 possibilities. So the key is find all the outcomes that you're interested in. This is sort of a probability word, outcome, and you can see there are 4 outcomes, and 2 of them are the ones we're interested in. And the answer is that each root has a probability of 1/4, 1/2 of 1/2. You add them together, you get 1/2. Okay, we're going to compare this to the area model. Here's what we just did using the tree diagram. And here's an area model. This also looks just like the boy-girl-child diagram you might have seen a couple videos ago. And you could see that they both give 1/2. The area model, you have 2 quarters that you add up. That's 1/2. And over here in the tree diagram, you also have 2 quarters, 2 roots, each of which is 1/4. So the advantage of the tree diagram, the big advantage, is that you can have more than 2 events. Suppose you flip 3 coins. What's the probability of getting exactly 2 heads? So here's the diagram for 2 coins, and we can add a 3rd coin. We can just make a new set of branches for each one of the branches that we had before. And I've put the new flip in red. So the top one is heads, 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 etc. What's the probability of getting exactly 2 heads? Well, we're going to circle those. We're going to find the appropriate outcomes. There's one. Can you see another one? There's one right below. Now see if you can find, there's one more. See if you can find it before I circle it. Here we go. There it is. There are 3 possibilities for getting 2 heads. Each one is 1/8 because it's 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, 1/2 of 1/2 of 1/2. So each is 1/8. There are 3 of them, so that's 3/8 altogether. What's the disadvantage of the tree diagram? Suppose we have this spinner, and it's 1/3 chance you get a 2, and 2/3 chance you get a 1. So the spinner is 1/3 and 2/3. What's the probability that the sum is equal to 4? That is, that you get both 2's. If I make a tree diagram, I'm going to start, and there's a 1/3 chance that I get a 2, and 2/3 chance that I get a 1. And then I move on to the next phase and there's still a 1/3 chance I get yellow, 2/3 chance, that means that the whole path going from start all the way to the 4 is 1/3 times 1/3 is 1/9. So you can get the right answer with the tree diagram. The disadvantage is you don't see the area. Okay, so you can imagine making that area picture. So notice once again we use the word of to represent multiplication, and it just makes sense here that the top part of the diagram represents 1/3 of the possibilities, and then to get from the 2 to the 4 is 1/3 of that. 1/3 times 1/3 is 1/9, because 1/3 of 1/3 is 1/9. Okay? See you around.